Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to another video that I haven't made in for fucking ever. But, Balance Manifesto for Path of Exile has come out with all the major and or key changes coming in for the new league, being 3.19 Lake of Kalandra. And it starts off by saying, Path of Exile Lake of Kalandra contains a number of balance changes. Ahead of the official announcement livestream next week, we have prepared a preview of our planned character balance changes and our thoughts behind them, so that you'll have plenty of time to think about them and provide feedback before the expansion launches. These are not the full patch notes, they only contain direct changes to character balance and are still subject to change. The first section being defense balance changes. The substantial changes to character defenses contained in the 3.16 expansion had the desired effect of encouraging players to invest more heavily in character defenses besides life stacking. We're happy with this direction, but we'll be making further changes aimed at making some of the most powerful defensive layers require more investment and improving diversity in defensive options. We are making a set of changes with this goal in 3.19, but are also considering further changes for future expansions, and we'll be refining these plans based on discussion and your feedback. The first problem they have listed is that spell suppression is intended to be mostly accessible to characters on the right side of the passive tree. However, spell suppression values on item modifiers are high enough that any character could reasonably reach 100% spell suppress through items alone, and passives that grant spell suppression are relatively weak in comparison, and the result was that basically fucking everybody that could get spell suppression cap would get spell suppression cap, and if you didn't, then basically you were lame and you sucked and you died. The solution would be to reduce the modifiers on gear, as well as increasing the modifiers of the passives on the talent tree. As you can see, all the various number changes. While I personally didn't go any kind of spell suppression because it was basically mandatory by everyone, it's better to see that they're swapping the focus back to the talent tree, because that's where it was intended to be anyway. And then just people found out that, oh, with enough investment you can completely circumvent doing it on the talent tree, and thus pretty much no matter what kind of gear you had, just be spell suppressed capped, because that's literally the best thing you can do, because armor sucks and energy shield is not that great right now. Next problem. Arctic armor does not grant enough defensive power to compete with the other defensive and preservation skills, particularly since the majority of its protection is only granted when you're standing still. And the solution would be to substantially increase the amount of damage reduction while stationary, as well as adding more support for more efficient defensive options for characters that spend a lot of time standing still in future content updates. The only other source of defensive boost while standing still is, I believe, one of the Pantheons, and I think it's Tukuhama's, and it might be physical damage specifically. But yeah, I would say that that's a good change. You know, it's not good enough, so let's just make it good enough. That's fair. I think it's only 25% reservation, or 35, but now it's going to be way more worth the mana than, you know, doing it just because you can reserve something and there's nothing else good enough. Next problem. Flesh and Stone is not powerful enough to warrant 25% mana reservation. Slight improvements to blind investment outlined below will naturally help it to some extent, but just a little more power is needed to make it a competitive option. Then the solution would be to increase the damage reduction from distant enemies that Flesh and Stone provides while in the Yeah, they nerfed the reservation by making it higher, but then again, people were literally only supporting it with Maim, I think, and that might be it. Maybe blind support if it gives blind effectiveness. And then people just like, oh, everyone's running it, except it's literally a physical only kind of buff or build aura that reservation that you would use. So giving it some power back would be better, even if it's just a small defensive bonus. rather than also increasing MAME effect. Next problem. Defiance Banner provides a substantial percentage increase to armor and evasion on top of the other benefits for low investment. It therefore grants all characters a way to further scale large amounts of armor and evasion granted by the Determination and Grace skills. It also disproportionately affects characters that do not have easy access to armor and evasion scaling on the passive tree when combined with Determination and Grace. Allows these characters to use Aura Effect to scale armor and evasion almost as effectively as characters directly investing into armor and evasion bonuses. Led to a combination of all three, feeling mandatory. I didn't know this is a thing. And even then, fucking all the hardcore things I've heard, I don't know if they were particularly using this, and pretty much no one on software does this ever. Like maybe if you're a champion. I think that's it, because they get a lot of stuff for it. But yeah, reducing the flat would probably be the best rather than, nerfing the auras, or worse, all three. Next problem. Wind Dancer Keystone's drawback of taking 20% more attack damage if you've been hit by attack recently is too risky to make the Keystone feel like worthwhile trade, even for characters with substantial investment in evasion. It's too likely you'll be hit again. Yeah, that's basically fucking... I'm going to let myself get hit just so I can take less damage. Take more damage for the initial hit to take less damage later on, or have more chance to evade. That sounds terrible, which is why fucking I've never seen anyone pick it, ever. Arrow dancing. No one uses that either. What? Penalty to melee evasion. Yeah, it's like fucking 50% more increase or more chance to evade projectiles and 50% less chance to evade melee attacks or whatever. Which is also why no one picked it. Buffing it, yeah, buffing it's fair. Buffing the useless shit is good. Ward is a relatively niche defensive mechanic, but currently is mainly strong when paired with Olaf's Resolve. That's just because of ward loop builds. That's all. Reduce the base ward restoration time, which is already bypassed by Olaf's Resolve, but a limiting factor for ward's usefulness in other cases, allowing builds to invest further in faster ward restoration. Are they nerfing the flask? Increasing the CD for restoring, adding new types. Okay, good, they're not nerfing the flask. Because that would pretty much kill ward loop builds, I think. Problem, grasping mail modifiers, 100% critical defenses, which provides too much value for building heavily investing in defenses for a single mod slot. I've only ever seen that used for ward loop builds, and I've never seen anyone use... I think it could be used for evasion or ES, but having no flat or no good flat rolls itself, it would be kind of hard to get a good corrupted one, probably. I think it can be made worse with a Divine Arm. Yeah, just having a gear slot that's like, hey, double, and thus making it semi-mandatory depending on the build, kind of needs to be toned down a little. Granted, they probably toned it down more than they should have. I would have probably said 80 or 75. Problem, Capricious Meld modifier that grants percentage of your maximum life as energy shield. That's a huge amount of survivability. For low investment. Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of like hybrid builds or whatever taking it because it was just that good. And then pairing it with Ghosted Dance or Divine Shield or whatever. Rework it to do percentage of physical thickness, fire, and lightning. That's a good compromise, rather than having just blatantly more effective HP. You just take less damage. Or physical damage anyway. Yeah, that's good. 2 elements at once. Yeah, that's kind of huge. Common passes if your blind effect do not adequately reward investment. True. So they're gonna buff it. Nice. Mind over matter builds that heavily invest in mana in general have been left in an underpowered state by various balance changes and the increased power of investing in reserve. Yeah, fucking they kind of killed mind over matter because it's just better to have more mana by increasing your reservation percentage. Power out of body armor mods. And it wouldn't really change Archmage that much. You'd be tankier baseline, but you still would have the same amount of damage. Fortification's too difficult for some melee and too frustrating. Yeah, I heard that was kind of lame from a few Mathel builds or whatever. Because you can get it, and if it's easy to proc, it's not worth the defensive benefit that it gives. Minion Balance. PoE is a game of finding items from every character. Minion builds historically got most of the powerful gems and didn't have as many strong options to benefit from finding better items. To work all these changes is to improve. Oh, it's all the minion stuff. Variety of viable minion builds, but also make minion builds more reliant on items. Yeah, I think they kind of were. It was gem sockets and or specific items, I think, or items with specific mods. There are limited options to invest in minion-related stats or gear, meaning that their base stats have to be inflated to compensate. This leads to most minion builds carrying too little amount of itemization and also limits the potential to scale high-end minion builds with better items. Solution: lower minion-based life damage, but provide more ways for players to invest in the minions on their own way on gear, allowing more damage and survivability. I don't really particularly care to play minion builds. It's not my thing, but taking away some base power and adding better scaling will be better in the long run. So that's a good change to see. Problem: some minion builds are clear outliers in terms of inherent power, so become the default choice for many minion-focused builds. True. Carrying golems, darkback skeletons. I don't think zombies have done anything. Certain specters are still top tier after just by getting nerfed. I don't think Reaper has been meta once ever since it came out. Like, it may have been good, but not just like that good. You reduce the power of outperforming skills and increase the power of underperforming skills. Thus it balances out more in middle ground. Yeah, that's fair. Oh yeah, Absolution was disgusting once it got fixed. Problem. Minions or monsters, and here's some stats for monsters that can significantly affect build choices and power. As these stats are not detailed anywhere in game, they are a cause of confusion for a lot of players, as well as rendering minion ailment builds near impossible except for minions specifically designed around them. The large damage bonuses granted to minions by frenzying power charges also cut out alternative options, especially for shield itemization with necromantic aegis and utility focused specters. Solutions split confusing monster stats into minion and non-minion versions so that minions can behave in the manner players would naturally expect. I don't use specters ever, so I'm assuming it will be a good change, but I have no idea because I don't do minion stuff. The most minion stuff I'd probably do would be exploding zombies, popcorn zombies, popcorn skeletons, popcorn SRS, and then maybe Dark Pact. I've thought about golems, they're just like, ugh. There just isn't a minion that tickles my fancy yet to where I'd want to play a minion build. Investing minion critical strike chances has been very possible in a very niche manner, but has never been fully supported minion build option. Additionally, the removal of the large amount of potential crit chance from power charges in the above change would render critical minions builds nearly impossible without further changes. So just add more minion crit. Sure. That seems fair. Oh, we're losing it. Okay, here, have back. Okay. Unnatural strength notable passive is extremely strong for almost all minion builds due to how well minions skill with gem level. This makes it hard. Well, that's the point. It's supposed to be for minion builds because Necro is the minion build. And then Elementalists are a minion build, but for golems, because it just jacks up their stats and stuff like that so extremely high. So I don't know if I'd want it to see nerfed, but it grants minions Unholy Might. This will never be picked ever again, because Unholy Might is physical as extra chaos, which means if you're doing an elemental minion build, it's useless. Nice. Miscellaneous skill and support gems. This is probably the most important part, since skill gems are a usually defining factor for a lot of people who want to play new leagues. Problem skills that cause corpse explosions, especially those that skill ignite damage, are currently able to deal significantly more damage than intended due to an oversight that caused Orc Champion and Orc Colossus corpses have approximately 60% more life. Oh yeah, fucking the base stats of the mobs were so high that just having that corpse would buff your damage just massively. So if you didn't use it, you were basically gimping yourself because the skills deal damage based on max life. Problem skills that can cause corpse explosions derive much of their damage from scaling. Increase maximum corpse life, mostly from skills in the passive tree. This pressure builds utilizing these skills to choose the Necromancer Ascendancy class, as it provides a large valued stat. It means that corpses of enemies you kill are not useful for damage compared to corpses you spawn yourself. Additionally, since the percentage of corpse life dealt is damaged by these skills is not scaled to skill levels, there's not sufficient incentive to level them up. Oh, so the flat of the percentage base doesn't scale, and the flat damage of the base flat damage of the skill wasn't high enough compared to the percent life, that people just weren't even leveling their skills. Wow, I didn't know that at all. Remove increased maximum corpse life stat and reduce the values available elsewhere. Increase the percentage of corpse life delta's damage from corpse explosion skills to offset the substantial damage loss. And have this percentage scale with level of the skill. Losing 50% damage. Holy shit. 60% using Unearth. 40. It's only going up by 2% of the corpse's health from level 1 to 20. Yeah, those builds are... They're not dead, but they've been severely gutted. The fire trap's hit damage was buffed from 317. The damage of its burning bird is also unintentionally buffed. Oh yeah, fucking had a 4,000 basic damage over time explosion. That's still broken if you can scale high enough. 3,000 base? That's huge. Most spells don't even see that. Cooldown based traps are balanced around being mostly single target. Damage supplement with potential to use them more frequently for builds heavily invested in doing so. Meaning CDR. Our trap builds currently have an extremely efficient access to increased trap cooldown recovery and increased duration, making it easier. So basically, the cooldown traps like Seismic Trap were fucking broken. Just not even like nobody uses Siphon Trap ever, not even for the heal. Flamethrower Trap is probably good for AoE clearing, and Seismic Trap was just good for everything, because you could just get it to a point where you could spam it most likely, and that it wasn't nerfed for basically 3 leagues or more in a row. So everyone would run it. Flat, crit, poison, you name it. So seeing Seismic Trap get a nerf is definitely good. Explosive Barrier currently has a single stat per hit and ailment damage per arrow stick with target, but this makes it impossible to reduce the damage of overperforming ignite builds without also affecting underperforming hit-based builds. Who uses a hit-based explosive arrow? Split the hit and ailment damage bonus for stacking arrows on a single target 2 stacks, reduce ailment damage and slightly increase hit damage. Explosive arrow no longer has 5% more damage with hits and ailments per explosive arrow. Instead, it now has 6% more damage with hits per explosive target, and explosions with 3% more with ailments. Yeah, that's fair. I guess if you want to hit, you'd be doing some kind of crit though, but I don't know anyone that does that. And spell-based damage values were dramatically increased in 317. Methods of triggering spells have the power of reducing compensation. Cast on damage taken and cast on death were omitted. No one uses cast on death for damage. And very select few builds use cast on damage taken for as a main form of damage. Increase the damage penalty. Cast on damage taken and reduce the damage bonus of cast on death support. Oh, so it got a buff, I think. And they nerfed cast on death. Known as alternate quality of cast on death support makes it too easy to guarantee critical strike. Oh, that's why. Okay. It was basically guaranteeing crits when you died. So the mob would explode. So yeah, seeing that probably toned down would be good to some extent. Divine Blessing support is intended to allow characters who do not wish to reserve much of their mana still using an orb by casting an orb for a normal mana cost every few seconds. The cost of the support orb is calculated based on that orber's original reservation requirement, and therefore usually requires spending a large portion of your mana. Oh yeah, because 50% would be like flat 50 fucking stuff like that. However, due to technical limitations, this cost is still calculated based on the size of your mana pool if it paid using life. This allows players who are reserving most of their mana to support an orb with both Divine Blessing and Life Tap, and occasionally spend a few thousand life to gain an extra orb beyond the amount they would otherwise be able to run. Prevent Life Tap from supporting blessing skills to match its counterpart Arrogance, provides slight compensation. Yeah, that's fair. With support and increase the benefits of using it normally. Sniper's Mark provides a large amount of power, projectile builds, but also provides powerful flash charge generation. Generating the life flash charges in particular provides a lot of mostly hidden power for builds utilizing Sniper's Mark, even though it is rarely a consideration when deciding whether or not to use the skill in the build. Combination of projectile stats and flash charge generation, but it's going to say that's too powerful. I think the flash stuff used to be on Poacher's Mark, and then they changed it to do extra damage taken and something else, I think, or flash charges on kill. Yeah. I mean, I don't know anybody that was using it specifically for the flash stuff, but it definitely is mega strong for projectile stuff, particularly Spectral Throw. But then again, Spectral Throw also really needs it. So, Hydrosphere is used to generate an extra hit. Many skills benefited from it. Splashing, chaining for single target. Cooldown was added. Cooldown is necessary. This cooldown is necessarily per entity, meaning the Hydrosphere still provides enormous damage in cases where... Oh, so people were bypassing it by having minions and mobs hit it so it would still splash. Oh, so people were still making it disgustingly broken. Oh no. Due to PoE's constant evolution, there are some skills and supportions that are left feeling underwhelming. Here, routine balance pass, underperforming, with you making them more attractive. Crackling Lance doesn't need AoE, it needs cast speed. Energy Blade getting 70%, 20% more damage. That's huge. Firestorm didn't need an impact change. Reeve didn't need damage. It needs its stack thing changed mechanic. Because the stacks drop off too fast and you can only have 4. And if you miss a pack from being too slow, well then you have to stack them all over again. It makes mapping fucking terrible. It doesn't need damage though, because I played it recently. Rejuvenation Totem. No one fucking plays that shit. No, I think maybe support builds do it, but that's it. Scourge Arrow, that didn't really have any problems. Shock Nova. It has 20% chance to shock or increase effective shock, but it has 10% to maximum effective shock. So it lets you go to 60% instead of 50. Oh! The ring always shocks. Never mind, that's huge. Holy shit. Soul Rim doesn't need flat ever. Getting the dot higher is better. Spell Slinger, I don't know if that it doesn't need. I mean, the flat will be appreciated for Spell Slinger, but ultimately it doesn't need more flat damage. I was getting 70%, 20. That'll probably make it a lot better, I guess. Sunder, faster traveling wave, that's bigger than any flat damage you can get, or scaling damage. Fall Flame Blast going up 60% more damage. Oh, that's huge! And still no one will play it. Hero number support. Getting a tiny buff. Urgent Orders, no one used, because you can just make... Most builds only use one Warcry anyway, and you can just make it instant. Critical Strike Affliction support. 70% damage multiplier from ailments from crits. 90. Kind of small buff. I mean, most skills don't need a damage buff, they just need quality of life. Like better attack speed scaling, or cast speed scaling, or AoE, or just not damage, because it's very blatantly obvious. Miscellaneous Ascendancy. Tricksters caused multiple balance issues over the years, but changes to the class have increased and that's lacking. True, it's not worth playing for pretty much anything. So, rework the Trickster, focusing more tightly on thematically appropriate defenses and speed. Detail will be shared. I think it has a good niche for damage over time. But the whole movement thing was kind of weird, and the charging thing was... The charges thing was weird. And just basically you went Ascent Trickster for some kind of crit, or cast on channeling, maybe cast on crit, if you could justify the crit chance, and then, or basically ED Contagion, Soul Rend, and that's literally it. Unless you're doing fucking Eternity Shroud, then you can do the chance on hit for as extra chaos. So I don't mind it being a dot ascendancy, but it doesn't play into it very well because it wants to be everything. It wants to be your charges build, your multiple hit build, your dot build, your movement build, your energy and evasion shield build. Just, it's trying to hit too many bases. It doesn't do enough. Juggernaut's unbreakable skill is overly complicated and therefore requires each stat granted to be watered down, meaning that Juggernaut players aren't able to focus on the stats they want from the skill. What the fuck is that? Oh, 2% life regen, 5% damage reduced damage taken, or 1%. 1.5% of physical damage prevented from hits in the past is generated in life. It now grants 8% of armor applies to elemental damage from hits. Added a new notable ascendancy. Untiring grants 40% increased life regen. 1.5 physical damage fences hits past 10. Yeah, it wasn't complicated. It was just offering too much. It was giving you life regen, damage reduction, and any damage taken regenerated as life. So it was giving you a huge defensive boost for a single lab run, basically. I mean, I don't know how you'd focus what stats you want. Anything for flat life regen, reduced damage taken. That's all damage taken. And I mean, I guess you can't really lean into physical damage taken prevented as hits, but you could focus into the regen aspect. It was super good for Righteous Fire. But now it's just kind of, well, they split it. Untiring will be better for Righteous Fire, and the reworked version will just be good for general mitigation. 8% of armor applied to elemental damage is kind of huge, though. It's like, that's like what? If you have enough armor, 2 or more endurance charges? That's huge. From Chieftain's Toa Forest Strength. Doesn't provide enough damage for slam builds, especially when it has to compensate for not being exertable and not synergizing with Fist of War. Oh yeah, that's the ascendancy notable that deals the extra slam when you slam on like a 2 or 3 second cooldown. Yeah, that was dog shit. Slams used by Chosen now deal literally double damage. I mean, I feel like you could have made it exertable and or also give it synergy with Fist of War, because that's the whole point. It still might not even be good enough for double damage, because it's still not benefiting from exerted attacks or anything. Which is what you're using with slams anyway. Master Alchemist. What was Master Alchemist? Oh yeah, the ailment chance. Now causes magic utility flasks by do have it doesn't work with unique flasks. That's not great. Like, it lost a useless stat, but it also lost any potential clearing power for utility flasks. And then Pathfinders just take 6% more elemental damage. Alright, cool. That shouldn't be a problem, because you're probably running utility flasks anyway. Especially if you're doing Explosive Concoction, which uses all of the elemental flasks, so you're still getting relatively the same damage reduction. Or just scale harder into flask effect, I guess. Unique items, another huge thing, because most of them are terrible. Crystallized Omniscience and Ashes of the Stars were introduced 3.17. They were so extremely common and so extremely broken you could get them from 1x, and then they nerfed their drop rate without changing them, and now they were 30 or 40 and 3.18, so no one used them. Except for the people that could obviously farm the bosses or farm currency for it. But yeah, they're pretty much, you can use ashes for almost anything, and you can literally use crystallized omniscience for anything elemental related at all. it's cool, but also disgusting just how it's like, oh, I could do this, or I could go crystallize omniscience, and then that's it. You weren't building an elemental build, you were building crystallized omniscience, and you could just use whatever skill you wanted. Ashes was cool, but not enough skills have a good alternate quality that would make them more viable with Ashes. And if it was a good enough quality to be worth using it, I feel like it should have been just have it reach that threshold naturally from quality. Like Poison Spark. it needs the amulet so you can do Poison Spark again. Why not just get it to 100% chance to poison with the quality so you don't need an amulet? That's 40x just to play something that's a damage over time. I mean, alternatively, you could go Volker's Guidance, but it's just like, eh. Those need to be buffed or changed into something else. And sure, you're just trading a slot for a slot, but at the same time, fucking, it's just dumb. In my opinion, Ashes is dumb because anything that needs the amulet to work should just be able to reach that build viability naturally through quality alone. But, lower the amount of elemental pen, what was it, like 4 to 5 or 3 to 5? And the resistances were something like that. Okay, so nerfing that. Yeah, Ashes is fine. It just makes builds viable, and some strong builds better. But Omniscience, you can just smack it on anything. And, oh, it's an Omniscience build. Melding of the Flesh transfers your highest maximum elemental resistance to your other elemental resistances, though it comes with a substantial penalty of your base resistance. It's extremely powerful. Outperformed other elements. Yeah. Yeah, nerfing that's fair. You shouldn't be able to just commit to one resistance, smack it on, and oh, all resistances. You know, if you want to be tanky, invest into it, because that's the whole point. There are no shortcuts to having a good, perfect build. Just if you can make it work, it can be easier or harder. Item balance, base crit, unbrittle. Enormous. This is mostly for minions, or just any build that could have a minion or something proc brittle, like Animate Guardian. So, I mean, I don't know if that needed to be nerfed, but maybe reduce the benefit or something. Just like, oh, it has 5% crit chance, but if worn on a Animate Guardian, it has 4 or 3. I feel like that would have been better, because that's what people were doing anyway. With the introduction of reservation efficiency, has encouraged a large range of builds to invest in reservation skills to provide a smaller, moderate degree. This is not a problem in and of itself, but currently the options for doing so are similar for every build and provide slightly too much generic power relative to the investment required. Reservation mastery options are the biggest outliers in power, as they provide larger amounts of power than entire. Yeah, basically, if you were on the top left, you'd get that Node and Templar. Pretty much, if you path near it required, so you get 2 or 3 auras. And the other one would be top. No, the Templar one was top left, and the Trickster one was top right. If you path near either of those, they're basically required to get, because then you could basically fit in another aura or two, depending on what you used. And then also enlighten 3 or 4 and stuff like that. Remove the mana reservation efficiency mastery and reduce the power of or effect. I don't. Why not just put more power onto Enlighten? Because people are going to use it regardless. Doesn't matter how much it is or isn't on the tree. Everyone's going to run Enlighten. Especially 4 if they can get it or get lucky. Which just make Enlighten more expensive, which then just keeps other people out. So why not just take it off? Or remove it from talents, but put it onto Enlighten. And then make Enlighten rare or harder to level. I feel like that would be better. Flask. Grant flash charges in your head. Oh yeah, that's basically broken. So they're nerfing that. So they removed a few tiers, I think. And they halved the amount of charges you get. Yeah, that's fair, because you can basically spam them. And it was fucking broken. Crafted modifiers that for skills cost no life or mana when focused. Undermine the importance of skills that cost and betrayed design space. As mentioned in 317, originally planned to disable them. 318. This is pushed back due to the freeze. So then basically you're removing the modifier. You'll get it somewhere else or it'd be super rare. Yeah, that's fair. There should always be a downside to... Nothing should be so good that it's free or can be circumvented. There should always be a cost. Timeless Jewel exclusive chain breakers too difficult to use. Also limiting potential to provide other sources of rage regen. Rework chain breaker to lead into rage as a resource in a more extreme manner. Remove potentially unwanted. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Okay, so 1 rage regenerated for every 25 mana regen per second. Mana recovery from rage regen is not applied. Skills cost 3. I don't know if that's better or worse. I mean, the only skill that uses rage as a resource is that fucking spinning blade thing. I guess if it was difficult to use without it and difficult to use with it, then yeah, that's just bad design. So sure, but I don't know if this is better, but I've also never played it. Damage taken as life is a relatively new recovery option, and there are not enough sources of it. Yeah. I could see it being more, I think like what, 40 or 80? Or like 100? Or a little bit after 100, but you have to like heavily invest into it. Sure, that's fair. And then more include a list of changes and potentially more changes or updates to these and full patch notes before release. A bit more detail about some areas, such as changing Trickster, will be revealed in the announcement live stream next week. So yeah, didn't really add a lot, but some of the stuff I don't play, like the Minion stuff, is just kind of worthless to me until they add a Minion that I personally find playing or investing into. And then most of the defensive changes I agree with. Like, if it's useless, just buff it rather than nerfing everything else. To a point anyway, just don't consistently keep buffing everything. If something's too strong, it's okay to nerf it. If something's too weak, don't bring everything down to its level, because then it just makes everything feel like shit. So buffing it's definitely the better alternative. Some things got more of a nerf that I would have liked. Granted, I don't play them. Just the empathy. Like the grasping nail stuff. Oh, 100%, now it's 50. Why not start off with 75 and then see where it goes from there? It's all about testing and improvements rather than just striking it down and hoping it doesn't get back up. I would have liked more stuff for skills, though. Like skill changes. All the corpse stuff is more or less... It's like the skill stuff for Ignite and Corpse Explosions are basically quadriplegics now. Instead of, oh, I'm playing a detonation build. Oh, I'm playing a chicken nugget build. And yeah. What do you mean? It's like, oh, it doesn't work. It has no arms or limbs or legs. So I throw it at him and I hope it dies. Or is distracted enough for me to run away. But yeah, that'll be it for today's video. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It helps the channel out. And you can always change your mind later. If you made it this far, feel free to leave a comment. Just like interacting with all the comments. And always remember to be better today than you were yesterday. And I'll catch you guys in the next video or stream. See ya.